Hey everyone, welcome to your deep dive just for you. So today we're going to get pretty small. We're going cellular, looking at how oxygen levels are actually controlled within different parts of a cell. We've got some excerpts from a scientific research article called Mitochondrial Respiration Reduces Exposure of the Nucleus to Oxygen.
Wow.
Sounds a little dense,
I know.
but trust me, there's some really cool nuggets in here.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I mean, just the idea that oxygen needs to be managed within a cell is kind of mind-blowing.
I know, right? You'd think it just, kind of goes where it's needed. But, we've got this paradox. We need oxygen to survive, but it can also be harmful.
Right.
In the form of those reactive oxygen species.
Yeah, those ROS we've all heard about.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a very delicate balance. And this research kind of sheds light on how mitochondria might be playing a key role in maintaining that balance.
So we're not just talking about mitochondria as the powerhouses of the cell anymore.
Not quite. I mean, obviously they are crucial for energy production. But this research suggests that they might also be acting as tiny oxygen sinks, basically using up oxygen and creating these low oxygen zones within the cell.
Okay, so let's unpack that a little. So they're using oxygen to create energy, but in doing so, they're also creating areas where there's less oxygen. It seems a little counterintuitive.
It does, but it's all about protecting the most vital part of the cell, the nucleus, where our DNA is stored. And this study used this really cool technique called fluorescence lifetime microscopy, or FLIM for short, to actually measure oxygen levels in different parts of the cell.
So like little tiny oxygen meters.
Exactly.
That's amazing. So what did they find?
Well, by targeting these oxygen meters to different parts of the cell, like the general fluid, the mitochondria themselves, and the nucleus, they found that mitochondria, which are often clustered around the nucleus, they actually create a low oxygen zone that extends to the nucleus itself.
So like a protective barrier.
Exactly. Picture this. Mitochondria forming a 3D shell around the nucleus, shielding it from higher oxygen levels.
Wow. That completely changes how I think about the role of mitochondria. But how did they actually prove this connection between the mitochondria and these low oxygen zones?
Well, they ran some pretty clever experiments. They used drugs to both inhibit and stimulate respiration. So basically messing with the mitochondria's energy production to see what happened to the oxygen levels when they inhibited respiration. Oxygen levels in both the mitochondria and the nucleus increased.
Yeah.
But when they stimulated respiration, those oxygen levels dropped right back down.
Oh, so they could manipulate the oxygen levels by controlling the mitochondria. That's a pretty convincing evidence, wouldn't you say?
Right.
Did they do anything else to kind of confirm this?
Oh yeah, they went even further. They used a genetically modified cell line that didn't respire properly, and guess what? These cells had higher oxygen levels in both the mitochondria and the nucleus. But when they restored respiration in these cells, the oxygen levels went back down again.
Wow, so they really covered all their bases. So we know that these mitochondria are creating these low oxygen zones. What does it all mean? Why does this matter for us?
That is the big question, and that's what we'll be diving into in the next part of your deep dive. We'll explore how these oxygen sinks could potentially impact everything from DNA stability to aging.
Okay, I'm hooked. Can't wait to learn more.
Welcome back to your deep dive.
Okay, so in the last part, we were talking about this paradox of oxygen being both essential and potentially harmful. And it kind of seemed like the jury was still out on whether mitochondria were the main source of those harmful reactive oxygen species, those ROS.
Right. It's definitely a nuanced issue. But what's really fascinating here is that this research gives us like a whole new lens for viewing that debate. By acting as these oxygen sinks, the mitochondria might actually be protecting the nucleus from like too much oxygen exposure and therefore kind of limiting the potential for ROS damage.
Oh, so instead of being the bad guys, they could be the guardians of the nucleus. That kind of flips the script.
It really does challenge the traditional view. This research suggests that their role in oxygen regulation is much more complex, with kind of both protective and potentially harmful aspects.
Yeah, it makes me realize just how much we still don't know about these tiny structures. So how does this all connect to the bigger picture of aging and those age-related diseases you mentioned?
Well, think about it this way. If mitochondria are regulating oxygen levels in the nucleus, which we know affects DNA stability, then it kind of stands to reason that they could be influencing how our cells age and how susceptible they are to damage.
So we're talking about the possibility of actually influencing the aging process by manipulating these oxygen sinks. That's a pretty profound concept.
It is, and it's something that researchers are actively exploring.
Yeah.
What if we could optimize mitochondrial function to protect our DNA and potentially slow down aging? or even target cancer cells that thrive in low oxygen environments.
Wow, those are some game-changing possibilities.
Yeah.
But let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. We're still talking about a lot of unknowns here, right?
Absolutely, it's a complex field, but that's what makes it so exciting. We're really just beginning to scratch the surface of how oxygen regulation works at the cellular level, and the potential implications are huge.
Speaking of complexity, the article also mentioned something about oxygen levels affecting gene expression. Can you remind me how that works?
Sure. It all comes down to how cells sense and respond to changes in oxygen. When oxygen levels drop, cells activate a special pathway called the hypoxia response. Think of it like an emergency system that kicks in when oxygen gets low.
Gotcha.
And a key player in this pathway is a protein called HIF1.
Okay, HIF1, got it. What does this protein do?
HIF1 basically acts like a master switch, turning on a whole cascade of genes that help cells adapt to low oxygen conditions. These genes can do things like stimulate the growth of new blood vessels, switch to more efficient energy production pathways, and even promote cell survival.
So it's like the cell is saying, okay, low oxygen, let's make some adjustments. And what's interesting is that, according to this research, mitochondrial respiration is actually playing a key role in this whole oxygen sensing and signaling pathway.
Exactly. By controlling oxygen levels, they're essentially controlling the activity of HIF1 and influencing which genes get switched on or off.
Wow, it's amazing how interconnected everything is at the cellular level. So mitochondria consume oxygen levels drop, HIF1 gets activated, and the cell adapts. It's like this chain reaction. But isn't low oxygen usually a bad thing? I mean, we need oxygen to survive.
You're right, but it's all about context. In some cases, low oxygen or hypoxia can indeed be harmful. It can play a role in various diseases, including cancer.
Right. I've heard that cancer cells often thrive in low oxygen environments. Seems counterintuitive, but it sounds like we're learning that those low oxygen zones created by mitochondria are more beneficial than harmful.
It's all about maintaining that delicate balance we talked about. Too much oxygen can be just as detrimental as too little. And this research suggests that mitochondria might be playing a key role in fine-tuning that balance.
So we're starting to see that this research has the potential to open up a whole new understanding of how cells function.
Yeah.
And how we might approach treating diseases.
Exactly. This is why this area of research is so exciting. It's challenging our previous assumptions and offering new possibilities for therapeutic interventions. But there's even more to the story.
Oh, I'm intrigued. What else is there?
Well, we haven't even touched upon the role of epigenetics.
Epigenetics. That's a whole other layer of complexity, isn't it? Can you give me a quick refresher on what epigenetics is all about?
Sure. Think of it this way. Our DNA is the hardware. And epigenetics is the software that controls how that hardware is used. It's the study of how environmental factors and lifestyle choices can affect the way our genes are expressed, without actually changing the DNA sequence itself.
Okay, I'm starting to remember. So how does oxygen fit into this epigenetic picture?
It turns out that oxygen levels can actually influence certain epigenetic modifications, which in turn affect gene expression. These modifications don't change the DNA sequence itself, but rather how accessible the DNA is to the cellular machinery that reads and transcribes genes.
So oxygen can impact how easily our genes are turned on or off without changing the genes themselves. That's pretty wild.
It is, and this research provides evidence that, you guessed it, mitochondrial respiration plays a role in this oxygen-dependent epigenetic regulation.
Those mitochondria are really proving to be multi-talented.
It seems they are. They're involved in a surprisingly wide range of cellular processes, from energy production to oxygen regulation to gene expression and now even epigenetics, and it's all interconnected.
Okay, I'm following you so far. But how exactly do mitochondria influence these epigenetic modifications? Do they have some sort of secret epigenetic toolkit?
Not exactly. It comes back to their role in regulating oxygen levels. You see, many of the enzymes involved in those epigenetic modifications we talked about, they actually require oxygen to function.
So by controlling oxygen levels, mitochondria are indirectly influencing the activity of these enzymes, which then impacts how our genes are expressed. It's like a delicate dance between oxygen epigenetics and gene expression, with mitochondria leading the way.
That's a great way to put it, and this just emphasizes how much we're still learning about the intricacies of cellular life and how these seemingly simple things like oxygen levels can have such profound effects.
It's mind-boggling. I'm ready for more, but I think we could both use a breather. We'll be back soon with the final part of your deep dive, where we'll tie all of this together and explore what the future might hold. Okay, and we're back for the final part of our deep dive into the cellular world of oxygen. We've covered a lot of ground, from those oxygen sinks in our mitochondria to gene expression and even epigenetics.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey, hasn't it? And it all points to this remarkable story of how oxygen is managed within our cells, with mitochondria playing a much more intricate role than we ever imagined.
Right, those tiny powerhouses are turning out to be way more influential than just energy factories.
Exactly, and I think one of the most compelling aspects of this research is how it might change our understanding of aging.
Yeah, that's what really captured my attention. Can you remind me how these findings could impact how we think about aging?
Well, we know that aging is a complex process, but one key factor is the accumulation of damage to our cells over time, things like DNA damage and oxidative stress. And since mitochondria regulate oxygen levels in the nucleus where our DNA is stored, it makes sense that they could be influencing the rate at which this damage occurs.
So the idea is that by optimizing mitochondrial function, we could potentially slow down the aging process by protecting our DNA.
Precisely. It's like fine-tuning the environment within our cells to help them stay healthy for longer.
That's a pretty revolutionary concept. What kind of research is being done in this area? Are scientists really looking into ways to enhance mitochondrial function?
Absolutely. There are a number of avenues being explored. Some researchers are focusing on lifestyle interventions like exercise and diet, which we know have positive effects on overall health and could also benefit mitochondria.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Seems like a natural approach.
Right. And others are investigating more targeted approaches, like developing drugs that specifically boost mitochondrial activity or protect them from damage.
So we might one day have mitochondrial enhancers that could help us live longer, healthier lives. It sounds like science fiction.
It might seem that way, but it's a very real area of research with incredible potential. Of course, it's important to remember that this research is still in its early stages. There's still a lot we need to understand about the complexities of aging and how to intervene safely and effectively.
You're right. We don't want to overhype the possibilities or give people false hope, but it's definitely an area to watch closely. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the main takeaway you hope our listener will remember?
I think the key message here is that mitochondria are much more than just the powerhouses of our cells. They're essential for maintaining cellular health, influencing gene expression, even playing a role in shaping the very process of aging.
It's like they're the unsung heroes of our cellular world, diligently working behind the scenes to keep everything functioning smoothly.
Exactly. And this research just adds to the growing appreciation for these remarkable organelles and the profound impact on our lives.
Well said. So next time we take a breath, we can think about those tiny mitochondria hard at work in every cell of our bodies, managing oxygen and keeping us going.
I think that's a wonderful image to keep in mind. It reminds us of the intricate interconnectedness of all living things and the incredible complexity of life at the cellular level.
This deep dive has been an amazing journey of discovery, and I hope you feel the same. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring.